Hi, my name is Tiffany from the Wingspan, and I'm a graduate assistant. This presentation is designed to teach you about the purpose and best practices for preparing and giving a presentation about your research. The Writing Center is part of a larger center for learning and writing support. We offer support services in 4 different categories listed on the slide. First, the writing support through undergraduate and graduate one-on-one writing consultants to brainstorm, draft, and revise writing projects. Second, tutoring services, which include one-on-one and small group tutoring services for a variety of courses including math, chemistry, biology, physics, languages, engineering, computer science, and more. Third, supplemental instruction where SI leaders provide study strategies for note-taking, organization, and task preparation. Lastly, peer academic coaching, which includes individual and group support to help students set and achieve goals and develop behaviors, habits, and strategies for success in college. So today we will cover the following topics to help you prepare a presentation that clearly shares your research. So first, how to organize a successful presentation with supporting slides, how to engage your audience, how to make the slide deck visually appealing, and tips for preparing for and leading the actual presentation. So to achieve a successful presentation, we must first be clear on what elements make up a strong and well-organized presentation. To start, you need to structure your presentation so your points are clear. Remember that unlike writing, the audience only hears the presentation once and can't go back and reread sections that were confusing. They must be able to easily follow along with your points. To keep things clear and have a clear through line, or make sure that you do not begin talking in circles, you should follow an organization where you begin with a roadmap or a list of the key topics you will be covering in your presentation, like the agenda slide that we presented just now. As for the rest of the presentation, it should begin with an introduction, move into key points or main ideas supported by evidence, and end with a summary or conclusion. We will talk about each of these in more detail. Often for a successful presentation, you will want to provide visual aid as well so that your audience is getting the information in 2 ways, through listening to you and through what they're seeing on the visual aid. The most common aid is a presentation, also called a slide deck, like a PowerPoint. However, there are also many other types such as a poster, a handout, whiteboard, or a prompt. Think of the presentation as a tool that helps you relay your ideas. It is a visual guide to help your audience follow along with your spoken words, so you want it to be engaging and organized. So each slide should be organized in a way that is easy for your audience to follow and listen to. This means that you will want to align the order of the information with the order that you cover them in your speech. Any visual should be used to assist the audience in understanding the information. So as you get started, you will want to introduce yourself and any other presenters. When introducing yourself, you should also provide some context for who you are and why you are speaking. This may just be your title or some background about your experience in the area. You also want to grab your audience's attention right away so that they are immediately engaged in the presentation. This could be a shocking fact, statistic, example, or telling a story. After you have their attention, you must explain your purpose and provide a short overview of what the presentation will involve. What is the point of your presentation? Make that very clear to your audience. So for your slide deck, you also want some introductory slides to go with your presentation. To begin, you need a title slide, and this should be something simple and straightforward with the title, list of presenters, possibly the date, or the title of a conference if necessary. Consider including a roadmap slide or a brief plan of what you will discuss in the presentation. This can help your audience follow along so that they know what to expect. The image on this slide suggests a possible organization of a presentation or agenda. Next, you have the introductory slide. This is the slide to give your audience context and orient them to your topic. You want to include what your research question is or what you are going to be discussing, why you are discussing it and why is it important, as well as introduce any analytical frameworks or theories you will be using. Here you can also present your overall main argument. The body of the presentation includes slides where you want to get into the details of your research. What are the main findings of the arguments? What did you find that support those? What does it tell us? How is it showing something new? Think of those like a body paragraph in a paper where you have a direct topic sentence stating the main idea, and then follow that with evidence to prove that statement is correct. You will also want to transition between your points. So here are some examples of transition statements. There are 3 ways the Nike and New Balance case applies to globalization. We now know that your next point will be about globalization. And in group presentations, you can also indicate when you will be switching between speakers. For example, now that I've explained why direct foreign investment is the best option, Sam will explain the market competition. To conclude your presentation, you want to summarize the presentation for your audience. What is the key takeaway you want them to remember? What is your ultimate point? You also want to demonstrate why it matters, so what? Why is it important, research that they should care about, or what are the impact or contributions? You might also use this time to suggest areas for future directions or research, which can be helpful to start conversations with other scholars about your work and interests. Lastly, you should include references as usual according to your citation style. This page can have smaller text as it is not something your audience will need to read, but something you will need to include to cite sources. When you are speaking throughout the presentation, it is also still a good idea to acknowledge sources out loud with statements like, according to, or in the article by. Now that we've talked about the components and organization, how can you make sure that you are doing this in a way that will engage your audience? The more engaging the presentation, the more likely the audience is to pay attention, gain something from it, and be persuaded by your ideas. For example, it may be appropriate to lead a group activity in a workshop, but not a business proposal. Consider which strategies work best for the context you are in. First and last impressions are important. As we already said, you do want to hook your audience at the beginning of the speech with a good attention grabber. You would also want to end with something memorable. One way to have an engaging presentation is to use words sparingly, and remember that the PowerPoint is a tool to assist you in relaying your information. So how do you choose what goes on the PowerPoint slide? Think about using slides to highlight key takeaways for your audience. What are things that you want to highlight and emphasize to your audience out of everything you say? Are there important topic sentences that convey main points? Are there summary points from the data findings? Is there statistics or quotes that you want on the slide to demonstrate your point that you're making in your speech? Another component of an engaging presentation is to incorporate visuals. When selecting visuals, you want them to add to or aid in the delivery of your information. Similarly, using graphs or charts in a research paper, the visuals you use need to serve a purpose and relate to the points you are making. Example of a visual slide with a graph. It's simple, provides relevant information that adds to what you are saying out loud, and is fairly self-explanatory. You can provide more context in what you say, but don't need to explain every aspect of the graph. It is also important that everyone in attendance can engage with your presentation as well. To be inclusive, consider doing the following. First, make sure that the text is easy to read. And for images in the slideshow, make sure that you add alt text for each image in the document in case the slides are being viewed on another device. You can also view captions when showing videos. There are also tools now that allow for live captioning for your own words as you speak. It can be helpful to have a printed version of your slides or to share a link at the beginning of the presentation for the audience to follow along. And if one is provided, use a microphone. Lastly, don't overcrowd the slides with information or move too quickly from slide to slide so that viewers don't have enough time to read or view the information. This leads directly into our next point. How do we make all of this look nice for our audience? You want your presentation to be pleasant for your audience to look at, not just for aesthetic purposes, but so that they will be able to follow along and keep looking at it. If it is hard to read due to being too dark or too bright, this will detract from the success of your presentation. This begins with font choices. Make sure that there is a clear difference between titles and body text on each slide. Be consistent throughout your presentation with font types. Select large enough fonts for your audience to easily read, and choose clearly legible and common font types. Similarly, avoid complicated templates from PowerPoint, as these might not transfer too well to other computers. And do not overwhelm your audience with a cluttered slide. It is hard to read and comprehend if there's too much on a slide, so keep some space between the text and images and balance the empty space in visual or text. So lastly, it is important to make sure that you have practiced your presentation before presenting. So next, we're going to talk about some tips on doing that. A script is different than writing a paper with complete paragraphs and every detail. Your script needs to provide more concise story of your larger paper. You want to explain main points, provide enough context for your audience to follow along, and make connection between your points. You will not have time to include every detail, and you don't have to. There are often times in the Q&A session for you to further discuss your presentation, and those audience members that want to know more will also have questions at the end. You may want to brainstorm what questions the audience will ask so that you are prepared as well. Read through the script so that you are not having to read it the day of your presentation. You want to make eye contact with your audience and be able to confidently deliver your speech. Practice getting familiar with your script by practicing with others. This might be in front of a mirror with friends or family, or you can also record yourself and listen back to hear how your presentation sounds. Is it clear? Does it make sense? You can also make an appointment at the Writing Center to practice and get feedback on your presentation. On the day of the presentation, make sure you have all of your materials ready and organized in advance. Be prepared with backups, especially when using technology. If you plan to bring a laptop, make sure you have any connection cords that you might need in case the location does not have these. It's also a good idea to have any virtual material such as a slideshow saved in several places, like on the cloud and on the flash drive in case you lose something, or have trouble accessing the slides, or you don't have access to the internet. You may also want to have a printed copy of your slides on the off chance that technology is not working. Then at least you have a copy for yourself. Make sure to arrive early so you have time to set up your space, test the technology, and introduce yourself to the organizers or any other parties. Lastly, there are a few things to keep in mind while you're presenting. First, slow down. Most people speed up and talk faster when they are nervous. When you feel like you're moving too fast or getting overwhelmed, take a second to stop and take a deep breath. You can also take a sip of water as a tiny break. Pay attention to your body language. Stand up straight and avoid leaning on things. You can move about the room and use hand gestures, but try to avoid too many other body movements, such as swaying back and forth, bouncing, shifting from leg to leg. Try to demonstrate excitement rather than fear if possible, and smiling gets you a long way. Keep an eye out on the clock as you present. If you're starting to run ahead or behind, change your pace as needed. And at the end, or even during the presentation, see if anyone has any questions, and make sure to thank them for their time and attention before leaving. That's all I have for you guys today. This is a list of the references we used throughout this presentation. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions about the writing process or anything we talked about today, you can schedule a consultation with one of our writing consultants at writing.ku.edu. We have in-person, e-tutoring, and video conferencing appointments available, so you can choose the format that you feel most comfortable with. If you do come to see us, we are located on the Anschutz Library on the 4th floor.